So I guess after this kind of introduction, I should really show you something that you care about. But I will take a step back, and I'm going to a real beginning of comparing what different countries in Central Eastern Europe, but not only here, are actually facing through helping their startups, how the startup communities can achieve. In addition to working at Micorosft today, I've been part of startup scene for past, I think, 7-8 years. I've been a founder at startups. I've been co-founded an accelerator program. I've been organizing hackathons in Eastern Europe, in Africa. I worked in the US. I've seen startups everywhere, almost around the globe. And I see that there are a lot of similar patterns that startups go through, that the startup communities and the countries are actually going through. And to kind of maybe oversimplify it, I divide it into 3 different cycles. There are startup communities who are just in the beginning, and those who are already trying to make it. I would call them intermediate, but also the advanced ones. Of course, on the top, we would say that Silicon Valley, because that's the place everybody wants to go. But what divides these different cycles? In the real beginning, I would say there is this idealistic view of being part of a startup, of making a scalable business from this tiny idea that you have in your head. There are different issues that I see across the region on those countries and those startup communities that are in the beginning. The biggest mistake is not sharing your ideas. You can't find team members. You can't find useful contacts, and not investors, of course, if you're not sharing what you have. So you can't go out there and ask for a signature on NDA before you actually say anything about your initial idea. In order to take the next steps, you need to talk about it. In those countries, in some of them, the money itself is not even an issue. There's actually money. But there is no practice or experience in the startup scene. Today, maybe which of these countries are in the beginning, who are thinking idealistically? When we look at Central Eastern Europe, then definitely some in the Balkan region, but few others in the more east as well. But the skills, for example, are still great. They have really good technical skills. They have big tech companies, so that shouldn't be a question. The question is the community that is now starting to learn. And they should learn from those countries, those startup communities that are a couple of steps ahead, where the startups are already talking to each other. If I have an idea in health tech, then it actually benefits me to speak with developers, to speak with others who have ideas in biotech or maybe in finance. Because we never know, we might share still profitable contacts for both of us. And that is really important part of that. Also, what happens in those intermediate countries, angel networks start to emerge. And there are different things in here. Again, it's not only about money, it's about the knowledge and experience. And also angels trying to figure out that we need to learn ourselves. It's not about finding the best startup out there, it's about knowing why I invest there and what I can put in addition to my money. And it's also knowing that you can't take 50 or 60% out of a tiny startup when you're just giving them pre-seed or seed investment. That startup won't scale. That won't happen at all. But there are also vision and clear action plans that are being taken. In those countries, for example, accelerators are being born. If you take Balkan region, Bulgaria, Croatia, or Baltics, for example, but of course the rest of Baltic Sea region. And now things are happening here in Poland as well. And what you need to continue with it, again, is communication. Communication not only inside the country, but between the countries, between the different startup communities. And this is where the regional startup communities come in handy. because they are the ones who know the important elements. So if you go to a VC fund and you ask Anne for information, she would know how to help you, or who would you might meet from Stockholm, because you might not know yet. Or you can contribute in a competition that Dominic was explaining about. You put yourself out there, out of your own comfort zone, out of your own country. Out to the advanced scene. So what happens in here? I'm pretty critical, and I wouldn't even say that, for example, the Baltics, even Estonia, is advanced. For example, our VC funds and our angels have a long way to go. They have come a long way. There are different networks, and they are doing their investments more knowingly. Not only internally in Estonia, but being interested elsewhere as well. Again, the borders won't stop you. But also important part is legal experience. In order to invest in companies, in order for companies to take care of their IPs, they need to know that from day one. They need to know how to prepare for that. Because mistakes in legal department, what you do today, might become much bigger in a year or in 2 years if you don't prepare yourself. But also what is important on the advanced scene is learning from the previous startup experience. Learning from the failure, learning from the success. As there has been already successful startups who are giving their experience back. There are different exits where they can learn from. And this is really important element in here. So what I would really like to emphasize is countries should learn from each other. I think bigger countries like Poland, different cities, regions should learn from each other and also look behind the borders. And communication, the truth is, the language of startup is English. If you're not visible in English, then you're not visible for most VCs that Anne could bring to you. And that's one of the key elements. Even if you start piloting from your home country, you need to have information out there in English. And if you go to international competitions, then they're always in English. And that's definitely one of the key elements. What I see around Central Eastern Europe is tiny countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Slovenia. They have an advantage. The local market is so small that ICT startups who need to scale up think globally from day one. Because the piloting in their home country is okay, building a minimum viable product as well. But actually starting a business, well, you can open a restaurant, but we're talking about scalable startups. Then you're not thinking locally, you're thinking internationally. And this is where I see the tiny countries have big advantage, as I said before. And also, I've heard one of Skype founders say a little time ago that when they started, let me remind you, they had 6 co-founders. 2 of them, business and marketing, were from Scandinavia, and 4 tech guys were Estonians. One of them has said that if they would started in Asia, for example, they would have had hundreds of people in just a few months. But the truth was that they were lack of resources, there were lack of people. You just couldn't hire more people immediately because you don't have so many. What actually it meant was they came up with much better ideas, much more effective ideas, how to approach their development. And this is definitely one of the reasons why Skype made it. So again, that's another advantage that we have here in Central Eastern Europe. We don't have to have a lot of people, we just need to have good skill set together, and we need to think outside of the box. And this is where it's also important to bring together other disciplines and learn from others as well. It's not only about developers building ideas, it's about, for example, health professionals coming in as well, telling about what are their issues, so that technology could actually enter these fields. So I will leave you with 2 things. I think that there are typical development cycles when we talk about startup communities, and different communities should learn from each other, so that those who are currently in the beginning shouldn't go through all of the same failures and experiences, but they should be able to learn from others. And it's really important to share the information, to have organizations who look across the borders, who really think that the startup community is something where you don't fight with each other, but sharing gives you many more opportunities, and everything will come back in a turn. Thank you. That was my presentation.